So my experience with grief was, I was 7 years old, and my dad very, very sadly took his own life. And as a child, especially back then, I'm 37 now, so it's a long time ago. I wasn't given any tools. I wasn't offered any counselling. The schools weren't really even told about it. Really, I wasn't really offered any kind of support. So at the time, I felt really, a lot of anger. Anyone that has experienced kind of grief in general, but suicide in particular, I felt really angry, uh, because I felt that he'd left me. I felt that he had a choice. I didn't really understand mental health. Of course, I didn't. I was only 7 years old. So I felt abandoned. So it's very confusing as a child to think I should be feeling really sad, but what I feel is so angry, so angry. And I do think that kind of anger and grief, same with anger and anxiety, they're almost the same thing, or they definitely manifest from grief. So my personal kind of journey was that I just suppressed it. I completely hid it. I pretended that I was completely okay, and I pretended that I was this happy child. And really, in my head, really, it was kind of for survival, because I was like, well, if one parent's done that, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I said the wrong thing. So if I'm perfect and I don't try and make any mistakes, no one else will kill themselves. And that was my internal dialogue as a child. So I put huge amounts of pressure on myself to do the right thing and say the right thing. And it was really only when I experienced complete burnout when I was 32, and it was a completely different situation. It was complete burnout at work. And I lost all my mental health. So I had severe anxiety that had then led into depression. Did I really then firstly have a window into my dad's world, and really started to understand that actually, of course, there still is an element of choice, but I really understood what it's like to lose your mental health, and what it feels like to feel like you can't go on anymore. And then luckily I did something called the Hoffman process. So it's a very kind of intense retreat for your mind. And that was really the first time in my life that I properly was able to process the death of my dad. And it was really quite transformative for both my mental health, but also my physical health. So I'd really held a lot of grief in my gut. I'd had horrific digestive problems my whole life. And then that completely transformed. So it really, it took me that long to even begin to grieve.
Mm. And how about you, Karen?
We, as a family, lost my brother last April. So we're going on, I don't know, like 17, 18 months since Craig took his life. And he was 30. Lovely, lovely boy. There's me and then him and my sister, who is 28. So he was the middle child. And I think the thing that we struggle with the most is forgetting or dealing with the fact that we are now a family of 4 rather than 5. And so it was a shock to everyone. But as we have sort of began processing this, we've kind of started to join the dots. And, you can't help yourself by trying to spot signs that might have been there that you missed. I mean, the problem for me is I live 600 miles away from the rest of my family, so I didn't get to see him a lot. And it's very difficult to be able to live with that guilt. I think that's the thing that's really difficult to process is, what if I was there more? What if I got him to come and live with us for a bit to build him up? What if? And of course, these are questions that you can't necessarily get satisfying answers about, because I can't ask Craig. I mean, I've tried asking Craig, but I can't get those answers that I need.
Both incredibly difficult stories, but very different stories in the same way, aren't they? In the sense of Kim being 7, you only being last year, you and your brother was 30, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah.
And both, I mean, Kim, can you remember the age of your father when he died?
Yeah, he was, oh gosh, I think he was 49 from memory, around 49, 50. So really not very old at all. And one thing that's really interesting is that I remember my mum was 42. It's actually, no, he must have been 52. And my mum was 42, and my boyfriend has just had his birthday and he's turned 42. And what's really interesting with grief, as you both know, is that it kind of really, it hits you in different waves. You'll be completely fine, and then there'll be something that will make you think about that person. And that was really interesting for me, thinking, wow, my mum was this age, the same age as my partner, when her world completely fell apart. And you're absolutely right, Karen. The thing with suicide, as a slight difference to other grief, is that you're always questioning whether you could have done more. You know, is it something I could have done? You know, did I do enough? Were there signs? And the same with my dad. He hid it very, very well. In hindsight, when I know another step, his brother also killed himself. So my uncle also took his own life, and I think my dad always harbored guilt for that. That's a bit of another story, so I won't go into it. But in kind of, it's only upon reflection can you then see, okay, understand why he would have been struggling with his mental health. And it's only really now, me working in mental health, can I piece it all together and go, of course he would have struggled. But unless you kind of really understand it, that's the problem. It's you can't see mental health.
Yeah.
So you don't know it, and people are really good at hiding it, and that's a difficult thing.